Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to give folks just a couple moments to join us today. And as folks trickle into the room, go ahead and use the chat to introduce yourselves. But we're super excited to have you here for our very first webinar of the year, framing for our advocacy work, and ways that you can plug into that. So feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and we will get started in just a moment. I see Diane in the chat. Hello. And Doug. Shar and Gunnar. Welcome, everyone. All right. Is everybody ready to get into it? I'll introduce myself. My name is Liz Lechleitner, and I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping items before we get started here. First off, I do want to thank you again for joining us, spending some time with us this afternoon. We do have an hour together, and we're reserving 15 or so of that for audience Q&A. So start thinking about your questions during the presentation. You can use the chat feature to share those questions, or you can use the Q&A feature. Our team is going to be monitoring both of those conversations, and we'll get to your questions in the remaining part of the webinar. We're also recording this webinar, wanted to let you know that. So we will be sharing it with you afterwards. We'll be sharing it with everyone who registered, actually. And we invite you to share it with your networks as well. And along with that recording, we'll be sending the PowerPoint. So you'll have an opportunity to have the slides from today as well. So now I'd like to hand things over to Victoria Drzmala, and she is NCBA's Government Relations Manager, and she's going to frame the conversation for us today. So the floor is yours, Victoria.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to our first advocacy webinar of 2026. It's great to see a number of familiar names on this call. My name is Victoria. I think I remember a lot of you from Impact. I'm still here, still hanging on. My pronouns are she, her. And like Liz mentioned, I'm the NCBA's Government Relations Coordinator. So I recognize that this webinar comes at a time when most or all of our focus is directed at the federal government. And so we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today to go over some key priorities and policy updates that are affecting our communities and our co-ops. At NCBA, we know that a strong government relations team is important to our members and to our mission. And this webinar will be a good opportunity to share some of our insights and answer your questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A feature to submit your questions, and we plan to set aside some time towards the end of our webinar today to get to them. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our President and CEO, Doug O'Brien, as well as our Director of Advocacy, Aaliyah Ned, who will kick things off for us. Thank you.
Victoria, thank you so much for that introduction, and I want to echo you on welcoming everybody today. It's great to see a lot of familiar names, great cooperative allies, and some new names, which is awesome. So welcome, everyone. I just have a few opening remarks, and I look forward to handing off to Aaliyah to run us through some of the priorities. And the thing I most look forward to is the conversation and questions towards the end. So there's our agenda, pretty straightforward. I do just want to mention a couple things to kind of set the context. This group knows that 2025 was a terrifically uncertain year in the realm of policy. With the new administration and some of the new congressional leaders, it was hard to know where things were going to go. We knew that there were a lot of threats to cooperative priorities, some that we'll be talking about today. And I want to reiterate my thanks for you joining today, because we had great success, the cooperative community did last year, and the only way that we did that was by working together. We were able to garner bipartisan support for the Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program that made sure that that program was implemented when that was really in question last year. And we also saw funding for RCDG in the 2026 appropriations. So that, we also saw House passage of a landmark housing authorization bill that for the first time includes housing eligibility across provisions and a number of other key cooperative priorities. And then, of course, the huge really generational fight on the tax status of one of our sectors, the biggest sector, the credit unions, and the "Don't Tax My Credit Union" campaign when Congress was seriously considering changing the tax status and could have been a domino effect on our other sectors. We came together and we fought and we defended cooperatives. We promoted and we advocated for cooperatives, which is exactly the mission of NCBA CLUSA. I'll just say that, working together in our policy advocacy, it's not only strategic across cooperative sectors, it is baked in to our cooperative principles, the 6 cooperative principle of cooperation among cooperatives. If you're a co-op wonk and you read the guiding principles, you'll see that not only is that principle talking about cooperatives doing business together, it is about co-ops in association doing education and policy advocacy. So thank you for being part of this effort. The next slide, we know this is just a couple top line data points that are in the co-op, the 2026 co-op impact report. Co-ops are prominent. There's over 65,000 establishments. There's well over 150 million people who are members of co-ops. So I think that the latest count on credit unions, 144 million people, 42 million people served and own and control their own electric distribution cooperative, and of course the majority of farmers that are members of cooperatives in such a prominent role in our food system. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The prominence of food cooperatives and housing cooperatives and the growth of worker cooperatives, platform and IT cooperatives. So by working together across these sectors, we're all stronger. And that's what this policy platform is really about. Next slide. Here's, many of you could do this, and maybe you do sometimes say some of these talking points in your sleep. But here's the framing. Here's how we talk about it when we're representing the cooperative community on Capitol Hill and in federal agencies. Co-ops reinvest back into the local economy at a higher rate. It's in our genetic code. These businesses are owned and controlled by the people who are in the community. When there's a profit, when there's benefits of any sort, they go back to the community and the people in the community. They tend to source goods locally much more than non-co-ops. They feature higher worker productivity and lower worker turnover, and they have a greater business survival rates over time. Because the governance is democratic and the members of that community, the priorities of that cooperative are responsive to the community. These are just a few of the ways that we talk about cooperatives. Next slide, please. I'm excited to launch. We are excited to launch the 2026 Policymakers Guide. We're going to drop the link into the chat. And this year's Policymakers Guide really builds on the work that we did in 2025, which of course was the year of the co-op. And last year, many will remember, we released a really fulsome 50-page, comprehensive cooperative impact report. We wanted to build on that. We wanted to build on that momentum. And so this year's policy priorities includes a number of pages that highlight the quantitative and qualitative data from a number of our key sectors. So these are designed to really be kind of a plug and play for advocates when they're showing policymakers and others the impact, the breadth, and the influence of cooperatives. So I think that is, we look forward to using that. Thank everybody who participated. I do want to mention our Cooperative Economics Council, as well as many of our partners, contributed to this impact report in 2026 and appreciate the joint effort. With that, I want to hand it over to our Director of Government Relations, Aaliyah Ned. Aaliyah.
Thank you so much, Doug, and echoing everyone's comments, just really great to see a lot of familiar names and folks in the chat, and welcome to folks who are joining us for the first time. As Doug mentioned my name is Aaliyah Ned, and I'm Director of Government Relations here at NCBA. And as has been said, as you all know and will hear me say, you all as cooperators are our best advocates for telling the co-op story, and the work that our government relations team would not be possible without your continued time, dedication, and engagement. So just a huge thank you to you all, and we're really excited for some of the opportunities for good co-op policy that are up this year. And maybe to start here, I know this will be a lot of information that we're going through in a very brief amount of time, but just know that we're always here to answer any questions, and we'll share out these slides if I'm moving a little bit quickly. But to set the stage here, Congress is off to a roaring start with the start of the second session to get ahead of the January 30th deadline for federal funding. They are working to fund key parts of the federal government. As a reminder, this short-term extension with the January 30th deadline was part of the deal to reopen the federal government after the shutdown in November. Including in that package, not just was a short-term extension, there was also a farm bill extension through September of this year, and a few full year funding bills for some key departments, including USDA. And so over the last few weeks, Congress is making quick work of the 8 outstanding bills to avert another shutdown. Just before the Senate went to a recess last week, they passed a package or minibus to fund another 3 departments, including Commerce. And last week, the House passed another slate of bills for the State Department, programs previously administered by USAID, as well as financial services for key instruments to co-ops like the CDFI fund and the SBA. And as we are speaking, the House is getting ready to vote on another set of bills for the Department of Labor, Housing, HHS, and some of HUD's housing programs. So that is to say, it will be a really hefty week for the Senate once they get back next week, as they'll only have a short window to move the remaining bills before they can move on to other legislative priorities. And we'll take a look at what's on the docket, but this includes some anticipated action on the Farm Bill pretty soon, hopefully soon, another reconciliation bill, which allows Congress to pass major measures with a simple majority, and consideration of the largest housing program overhaul in decades. And this is all during a midterm election cycle. So with this long to-do list and large windows of opportunity, I just want to reiterate, again, you all are best equipped to tell your story, and we are here to help with talking points, who to talk to, who to reach out to across Congress and the key committees. So as I mentioned, another reconciliation bill where we saw that key win in preserving the credit union tax status last year is on the docket. This is in very, very early stages, but a framework was released for a second package just last week, so it is still developing. But some of the key priorities that are outlined and that have been reiterated by congressional leadership are building on provisions of last year's reconciliation package, including some healthcare and tax. And again, it continues to develop, but both Senator Thune and Speaker Johnson have expressed their support for doing another reconciliation bill. So we'll keep you all updated on the details as it relates to some of the co-op provisions and opportunities for you to plug in there. That said, again, despite the simple majority that allows for a package of reconciliation, there are some challenges, as there's currently only a 1-seat majority. So this will require some ongoing negotiations across the aisle and bipartisanship in navigating those provisions. There's also ongoing funding negotiations and questions around how to spend dollars, again, with a farm bill and reconciliation up in the same year, and then a short window to take action with a midterm election cycle coming up. So about 6 months to work through a pretty long to-do list. That said, again, these are some of the opportunities that we have here. And for 2026, we have some tried and true priorities that fit in very nicely to what's on the docket for Congress. Number one, this always includes preserving the fair tax treatment of cooperatives, the Farm Bill across the rural development title and other titles that will be addressed in a much narrower package, building a better world through international cooperative development, continuing to make sure that cooperatives have access to capital and are preserving small businesses in our communities, providing affordable housing and home ownership through cooperatives as housing continues to be a top priority for both Congress and the administration, and creating a resilient and future-proof economy by investing in key co-op programs. And we want to dive a bit deeper. Again, we encourage folks to explore the 2026 Policymakers Guide. But just to summarize it here, we always keep an eye towards preserving the cooperative tax status as federal policy continues to reflect that the cooperative business model returns economic benefits to its member owners. So we always want to make sure that co-ops are treated fairly and not put at a disadvantage to other business forms, particularly, as I mentioned, in an environment where there are ongoing funding negotiations. We keep an eye towards any proposals that may seek to change or adjust the tax status of cooperatives and credit unions. And on the Farm Bill, as I mentioned, we expect action to be taken on a slimmer Farm Bill package, as some provisions were included in the last reconciliation package, but we do see a lot of work that needs to be done, particularly on rural development programs, as well as other programs that support cooperatives. And for us, modernizing the Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program and ensuring that cooperative development centers have the flexibility, the funding, and the enabling legislation to continue to support new and emerging cooperatives, as well as longstanding cooperatives, is a high priority. We were very grateful to see both a Senate and House bipartisan bill to reauthorize the RCDG program, which is the only program that solely supports cooperative development. Included in that is making sure that the latest co-op data is available through the economic census from 2017 and 2022, as data is always an important way to make the case as much as telling our stories. Ensuring that there is investment, significant investment, to allow rural communities to support flexible capacity building and locally led economic development through partnerships with cooperatives is another priority for the Farm Bill. As we know, each community is different and each community's needs are different. However, the cooperative model is a time-tested tool and should be used to promote long-term economic development, as that is what we are built for. There's also the Rural Energy Savings Program and reauthorizing some key international food assistance programs to preserve long-term affordability and support global cooperative development. In promoting and facilitating cooperative ownership, this reflects some long-standing priorities that a lot of folks continue to beat the drum on. In fact, last week, Urban Crawl testified before the Senate Small Business Committee on ongoing ways to improve cooperatives' engagement with the SBA, and particularly addressing some of the misaligned requirements in the lending programs like the 7A program. Because we have shared ownership, we know one person's assets shouldn't be signed on the line through a personal guarantee. And we continue to make sure that the agency can waive the personal guarantee for cooperatives because we know that it is a wise investment of the SBA's dollars, that co-ops are resilient and have better business survival rates. And we saw through some data that NCBA went through during the pandemic when this requirement was removed, a whole lot more co-ops are still in business. In fact, about 97% of them. And so this is really a proof point, and we continue to push for legislation like Main Street 2.0 to address this requirement. By getting access to capital through the SBA, this would better support conversion of businesses to cooperatives. And to assist in that, we are excited to see funding being considered on the House floor right now to provide grants for the Department of Labor's Employee Ownership Initiative, which is a new program, another avenue to support cooperative development and to continue the outreach and education to small business owners. We ran through some of these stats earlier, but just to paint the broad picture here, about 3 million small businesses whose owners are approaching retirement age, risking 32 million jobs. And 2/3 of business owners struggle to find a buyer. And so we see a real opportunity to convert them either to consumer, worker, multi-stakeholder cooperatives and better support through the SBA, as well as support and grants through the Department of Labor can help facilitate those transitions, or at least educate small business owners on cooperatives to build on the work that many co-op developers are doing every day. And housing. We know this is a big one that has come up time and time again. Recently, the administration released the plan to support affordable housing. As I mentioned, it's a pillar that is included in the outline of the reconciliation bill. And we saw major wins with the House pass package that Doug mentioned earlier on including cooperatives across the programs within that legislation. We do still see that legislation needs to be taken up by the Senate. However, we also know that there are already 1 million people who live in cooperative housing, and about a quarter of those provide permanent affordability. And those that aren't permanently affordable provide long-term affordability. And so including housing and cooperative models, either through tax provisions, through existing programs, as well as ensuring that staff at the Housing and Urban Development Department are enabled to have the knowledge to understand and digest and communicate and provide technical assistance to cooperatives is key. We know, again, cooperatives and resident-owned communities are a time-tested solution, and so their eligibility should be preserved. And here are some data points for folks to dig into. But again, eager to get to the questions. So before we jump to questions, and please drop them in the chat, just want to highlight international cooperative development remains top of mind in supporting federally administered global programs in the annual appropriations process. We have seen support for programs continue on a bipartisan basis in Congress with the funding bill that was passed last week for the Cooperative Development Program, Food for Peace, and Food for Education. And we should ensure that these programs can continue to support global cooperative development and create more resilient local economies by reauthorizing them within the Farm Bill. So again, I'm really eager to jump into your questions and get into a bit of a discussion here. But moving to Q&A here, I'll ask Victoria to take a look and see if we have any questions for Doug and I. let's see here.
Frozen.
And as folks are dropping their questions in, I would ask Doug anything you want to build on here, questions that you've seen come through already for us to jump into. And Doug, you're muted if you're speaking.
All right. Yeah, I see a few comments in here that I might just comment on. Leah, please jump back in. Ellen, you asked if we know if RCDG will stay with NIFA or if there's any discussion about it going back to USDA Rural Development. I don't think we have clarity on that right now. I can tell you that I was over at the department 2 weeks ago for a stakeholder meeting, and I talked to a few folks, and I learned a couple things. I I suspect that NIFA might keep implementing it. I mean, this is the first year, but with some of the staff reductions in the department, and particularly the rural cooperative business services, I think there's some real capacity issues there. Um, I would say that Aaliyah's stayed very close to the folks over at NIFA. So I know many, and particularly in the CW network, but then also others. If you have comments, how, because I think NIFA is also learning as they go too, and we see that they're at least somewhat receptive, to conversations. So we'd be very happy, and in fact we want to make sure that we improve that implementation as it goes along to the extent that we can. Um, Another thing I learned, I know this is being recorded. I don't know if this is public knowledge or not, but it's probably public knowledge around town. This sort of last year in 2025, and for those who tracked RCDG, there was this dynamic between the Office of Management and Budget and the department, and it's a little opaque. It's kind of a DC thing, but overly simplified. OMB, the White House Office of Management and Budget, was holding the apportionment or the release of those funds for the U.S. Department of Agriculture to be able to compete that program. They continue some of those practices into this year in 2026. So we have some concern that if we were hoping that, well, that was the first year they were kind of getting their house in order before they were opening the door. Um, we don't have a whole lot of promising indications that things are going to be nice and clear this year, but there's a huge unknown with that. So that's, I mean, just sort of another example of why 2026 is going to be so important to work together. But it's something we're going to be watching so closely. Kim makes the comment about SBA and the food co-ops with hundreds or thousands of people, and yeah, we couldn't agree more. I'll mention that Ali and I were over to see the SBA folks now a month or so. I guess it was in early December, perhaps. And we actually had a really good meeting with the number two there, the deputy administrator, as well as a number of key people, and we look forward to continuing to engage with the SBA and with Congress. At the end of the day, it's probably going to take both congressional action and some executive action to really make this work for cooperatives. So that's a couple things I'll mention.
And maybe to build on Doug's point there in terms of SBA loans, the Main Street 2.0 Act, which we were very excited to see introduced last Congress and hope to see it introduced and are working to get bicameral introduction in the House and Senate in the next few weeks here, would not require a personal guarantee from any cooperatives. In the SBA regulations, it does explicitly have consumer cooperatives like food cooperatives and worker cooperatives as eligible entities for the lending program. And so it would remove this requirement across the board, as well as that building on the engagement with SBA and the encouraging conversations we're having.
Yeah. Unless I'm missing, and Victoria, please jump in if I'm missing something. But I'll just mention a couple other things building off Aaliyah's presentation. Um, the the work with the agencies will be as important, maybe more important this year, and we're doing that not only with SBA and USDA, but we've been over to the Department of Labor. We're engaged with HUD, and as sort of their strategies and priorities have settled in, as well as their personnel. This is a great year toward the beginning of the year to engage with those folks. So so that's we're doing that work. If you have any guidance or questions about working with those executive agencies, let us know. Now is probably a good time to think to just mention, and Aaliyah might have mentioned it before, and I know Virginia's going to talk about some of the things that you can do. It just you are Aaliyah said this. You're the best advocate for your cooperative, for your sector, for the broader cooperative community. Members and leaders and people who work for cooperatives in district, in the state, are the best advocates, and we want to give you the tools. That's not only here in Washington, D.C., but invite your representative, invite your senator to come visit your cooperative. And even if you can't get that rep or senator, their district director, they'll come. And it is really a worthwhile investment of your time, because you're not quite sure when you want to reach back out to that office. But when you do, you don't want it to be the first conversation. You want it to be the second conversation. And on the first conversation, you want to show how your cooperative provides value to the community. It is really a pillar of that community. So with that, unless there's other questions, yeah.
Happy to jump in, Doug. Thank you. Sorry, my computer almost crashed a couple of minutes ago, but we're safe and sound on solid ground here. We've got a good question here, which is Doug or Aaliyah, how do I know which key members of Congress we should reach out to? How do you pick out? I mean, there's hundreds of them. How do you know which ones to target your advocacy towards?
My quick answer is ask Aaliyah. And she'll help you target those, but she'll have a longer answer. Leah.
Thank you, Doug. I think you stole part of my answer there, but Victoria and I are happy to provide you with the right contacts within the congressional office, whether it's your representative, but also a great avenue to contact folks who have influence over the programs that best support the cooperative ecosystem, are across some of the funding committees. So the appropriations committee that is responsible for providing the funding levels on an annual basis for programs. The agriculture committee is a timely one to reach out to, particularly if you're doing work within rural communities, if you're a development center, if you're a food cooperative, across all sectors, really, to show the strength of our model, as well as the small business committee, because they have a vested interest in all things pertaining to the SBA and small businesses and cooperatives. We know vary in size, but that they're great contacts to create more enabling legislation for cooperatives across all sectors. But if you're having a specific issue, worried about a specific program, or curious about what programs might be available, we're always happy to explore that with you and connect you with the right folks. And as Doug said, I just can't reiterate it enough. Inviting them to your co-op is the best way for them to see how those investments that they're making and policies are being actualized on the ground.
Thanks, Aaliyah, and thanks, Doug. And maybe a really quick follow-up question to that one is, how should we contact those offices? Is it better to call? Is it better to email? Is it better to go in person? What do you suggest as the best way to get in touch with folks?
Lee, you go ahead.
I will say, I think I heard this recently from some staffers. It only takes them hearing about an issue 5 times from 5 different people to raise it and run it up the chain. So the best way to contact them, especially if you're looking to establish those initial relationships, just letting them know that you're here, the value add you're providing in your community is an email. That is always very helpful to staffers. And then there are times to call, but emailing their policy staffers who work on specific issues is the best way to go straight to the source. And again, we're happy to provide you with those contacts. But when we see things that are like generational threats, like the threat to the credit union tax status, as Doug mentioned, sometimes picking up the phone and calling is a very, very quick way um, to let folks know that this is a priority. When phones are ringing off the hook, it quickly elevates issues to the member of Congress. So there are times to do both, but an email helps them see the data points, know who you are, know your contact information, and gives them a direct route to circle back and ask questions, which they do often. And we're always encouraged to hear from folks when that occurs. And I see Suzette jumping in here and saying to invite them as speakers as well. That's always a great way to get engagement.
I see some ideas are being dropped in the chat here for some good ways to get members of Congress down to your co-ops. I will echo what Aaliyah and Doug have said so far. Yes, it's a great idea to get the staffers down, the member of Congress down, and we are here to be your resource in order to get those connections built for you on the ground, especially on this side. We refer to a lot of your co-ops when we go to the Hill. We talk about you guys, we talk about your work, your stories, your successes, and a lot of the staffers that we meet with do specifically ask for personal stories from their district, and that always wins them over. And so the more that you are in touch with them, the more weight it adds to our advocacy efforts here on the Hill. So always, and I just muted myself. Okay, a follow-up question. Maybe a little bit more about timeline is when is it a good time to contact Congress or state officials? Which is a really good question because we know that the calendar for our members of Congress can be a little bit confusing. So turning that over to our speakers.
Leah.
Yeah. And again, early and often as possible. I think, as Doug said, and we can't reiterate it enough, you don't want the first point of outreach to be when you're necessarily making an ask to that member of Congress or that staffers to act on your behalf. Um, Having that background awareness of the work that you're doing in their district, in their state, really does take it to the next level in terms of how quickly folks may move on some of the shared priorities or issues that are being raised. So now, today is a great time to reach out to them using the 2026 Policymakers Guide. Um, as senators are coming back to town to take key votes on the bills that I mentioned, and that will be shared in the PowerPoint for international cooperative development, the CDFI fund, which supports lending to co-ops given challenges with the SBA and supports communities, the new employee ownership initiative. This is a great time to reach out to your member of Congress. But also when they're in their districts, and I think Victoria can share a little bit of her insights as a district staffer, former district staffer.
Yeah, happy to. I was sort of leaning on that experience a couple minutes ago and answering that question. But yeah, my background is actually in being the person to receive your requests. So on the other side as a district staffer, That was my previous role. I worked for a member of Congress in Pennsylvania, and we did prioritize listening to and visiting constituents whenever possible. It was a huge focus for us to go out and be involved in as many businesses, openings, ceremonies, wherever we could be to show people that we, truly cared about the message and wanted to take it back to Washington. That's where we would be. And so the district staffers from your members of Congress are probably very willing and able to listen to you when you call in. And I do strongly suggest you reaching out to us and our team here. We are working on a toolkit of sorts, which we'll share some more information on in the coming weeks that'll help you formulate some of this outreach in the district because we definitely want to equip you with the tools necessary in order to get, the member of Congress or their staffers down to visit your co-op so they can then take that story way back down to, or north, wherever they're coming from, to Washington and talk about it.
As was mentioned, this is a re-election year for the entire House of Representatives and for a third of the Senate. They're even more motivated to spend time with constituents. So, and they tend to, their calendar, they tend to spend more time in district, although it can be a little bit unpredictable. But if you're ever wondering when they're going to be in district, ask the team here. Okay. We're still on here, and we'll answer questions anytime, not only during this this webinar, but after the webinar. But unless there's any others, Victoria, we can move to, I think we move to Virginia and talk about what you can do.
I think is the tracker. Yeah, the tracker first.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Aaliyah. Yeah.
And Victoria mentioned some of the upcoming resources, including toolkits of all sorts, but I just wanted to mention we're really, really excited about a new tool that will be coming. And this is just a little preview, but it is a state and local policy tracker for cooperatives so that as things are moving through the state legislature, flowing down in the implementation of some federal programs that require state action, like the tax provisions that were passed last year, and other pending proposals to better support co-ops like conversion tax credits and new funds. This will all be accessible on the state and local policy tracker available to NCBA members. We're excited to launch this very, very soon. So please do keep your eyes peeled, but I will hand it over to Virginia here.
So there is one more question in the chat that I saw from Michelle Schrei. Are there serious concerns about another shutdown? Oh,
yeah,
there we go.
I just responded. I think the conventional wisdom in town is that they're going to get it negotiated. But honestly, Michelle, nobody really knows these days in town. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. And thanks for all the really great questions and suggestions and ideas in the chat. So this was an awesome presentation. Thank you, Doug, Victoria, Aaliyah. Great actionable suggestions. And so what's next? How do you stay plugged in? And so, for me, as the membership director, maybe I'll introduce myself first. I know many of you, but some of you I don't. My name is Virginia Brown. I'm the membership director at NCBA. I've worked with NCBA for almost 12 years now. I worked on our international cooperative development projects. Most of you know what happened with that last year. And so super happy to be in this new role working with our membership. And so if you aren't a member of NCBA, that's the best thing to do is become a member and then get super engaged in the work that we're doing. As Aaliyah, Victoria, Doug mentioned, contact your member of Congress to support co-op priorities as early as possible. Invite your member of Congress and legislators to visit your co-op. I think there were some great ideas on, well, what could that visit look like if you're doing your annual meeting? If you can tour, here's a great P6 idea too. If you've got several different
co-ops in your area, make it a big P6 tour, maybe something like that even. Can think of all kinds of ways that you could provide a really, I think, engaging visit for members of Congress. And then subscribe to our Co-op Weekly for the latest advocacy updates. We're constantly pushing things through our Co-op Weekly that goes out every Wednesday morning. There's a link in the chat for how you can sign up for that. And then also put these dates on your calendar now. Save the date. Our annual member meeting will be May 5th. And we're also going to do a probably small advocacy event around that, and stay tuned for that. And then really exciting, many of you know about our Impact Conference that we host in Washington, D.C. every October. This year, I can't believe it, it's our 10th annual Impact Conference. So really exciting things we're planning for this year, and that's October 7th and 8th. And so I think I will leave it there.
Okay. Well, very good. I thank you again. That's the program. That's the agenda. So, one, thanks everybody for being here today. Much more. Thank you for advocating on behalf of cooperatives. We are here to support your work. Do not hesitate to reach out to Aaliyah, to Victoria, to me, and we'll support your engagement with policymakers. It couldn't be more important. Things are terrifically uncertain. Many of our priorities, many of the things that we already rely on, will still be at risk. The way that we will be successful, as we were last year, is if we work together. So thanks for being here today. Thanks for what you do for your co-op in your community, and do not hesitate to let us know how we can help. And with that, Aaliyah, unless there's anything else.
Huge thank you all, and look forward to seeing everyone being in touch soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.